Welcome to the third week of the show at 6, BC and the Common Good. My name is Jim Keenan, and I am a Jesuit priest here at Boston College. Together with Brian Fleming, Thomas Childs, Brian Garreau, Bert Howell, and Billy Sue, we are the producers of this series. In last week's segments, both of which were on COVID-19, we heard repeatedly about the disparities in healthcare, employment, and education that lead African Americans to be much more at risk to this pandemic. At the same time, the brutal killings of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd highlight all the more how white privilege, anti-Blackness, white supremacy, and other forms of racism endanger the lives of our brothers and sisters. We are at Boston College, a Jesuit Catholic school committed to being men and women for others. In light of these events, we are therefore asking our host that whether they are interviewing about prisons, food insecurity, athletics, or like this evening, human-centered engineering, that as they pose their questions about the issues at hand and the common good, that they specifically ask about racism in its many forms. We know that through solidarity and a commitment to the common good, we can beat the virus of COVID-19, but we must be no less committed to defeating the virus of racism that touches the lives of all of us and destroys the lives of so many. Hopefully, by this show, we will come closer to ending both of these threats. Thank you for your understanding and enjoy the show.
Good evening, sir, at the Boston College William F. Cannell School of Nursing, and I welcome you to the show at 6, BC and the Common Good. The show at 6 features friends and members of the BC community discussing a range of issues affecting our world today, all revolving around the theme, common good. Topics include how the BC community is responding to the effects of COVID-19, to the enduring challenges of the marginalized, to our own resiliency and solidarity, and to the upbuilding of human dignity throughout the world. The show is based on the central insight of the common good, that is, that the resources that humanity has and needs must be shared equitably. For instance, today, each of us is called to promote the common good by social distancing, or by wearing masks, or by washing our hands. These practices, like other forms of solidarity, are not only for our own good, but for the common good. Additionally, recent violent acts by police forces against Black men and women in this country have shed light on long-standing racism and white supremacy. Many are out in the streets protesting these forces as we speak, and each of us is individually charged with ensuring that we are not perpetuating and contributing to the systems to marginalize many. These acts of resistance and solidarity are another way we can promote the common good. Before I get to introduce the others on the show this evening, I just wanted to start with some logistics. At around 6:40, my co-host and I will actually ask questions that come from the audience. So anybody who's listening can actually pose a question before 6:40 via the question and answer button at the bottom of your screen. And again, we will be taking questions from the audience and pose to our guests today. So make sure that you submit your questions. And when you do, we ask that you identify yourself with your name and your relationship to Boston College with your question. I'm so excited that my co-host today is Mary Rose Bissinger. I'm honored to be hosting with an alumna of Boston College class of 2015. We're so glad to have you back at BC. Mary Rose became interested in engineering as a student at BC while she was pursuing her Bachelor of Science in Math. After graduating, she went on to the University of California, Berkeley, where she got her master's in civil systems engineering, and there she became interested in urban transportation systems. She worked for Bridge, a demand-responsive transportation startup in Boston, before going back to school for her master's in transportation at MIT, which she is finishing up now. Welcome, Mary Rose. Our two esteemed guests for today are Associate Vice Provost Sunan Bhattacharya and Dean Greg Coucher. I'll introduce them both briefly. Professor Sunan Bhattacharya is the Associate Vice Provost for Design and Innovation Strategy in the Office of the Vice Provost for Research. Sunan is a learning architect and an industrial engineer with a specialization for design-based teaching and learning. He is currently spearheading the design, development, and introduction of BC's Human-Centered Engineering Program. He also holds a lecturer and advisor position at Franklin Olin College of Engineering. Before returning to academia, he was the global learning strategist for Autodesk, leading its Learning Futures team. In this role, he was globally responsible for the strategy, management, and evangelization of Autodesk's future influence advocacy in design-related STEAM and engineering education. Prior to Autodesk, he was the principal and co-founding partner of Arjuna Learning Designs, a firm specializing in the creation of interacting learning objects to enhance teaching and learning for name brand publishing houses. He has also been tenured as a professor of industrial design at Southern Illinois University of Carbondale. He's a recipient of the Innovative Excellence in Teaching, Learning, and Technology Award from the International Conference on College Teaching and Learning. He received his Master in Design in Industrial Design from the National Institute of Design in India and holds his terminal graduate degree in Industrial Design and Human Factors from The Ohio State University. Welcome to Associate Vice Provost Bhattacharya. Dean Coucher has served as Dean of the Morrissey College of Arts and Sciences since June of 2014. He also has a joint appointment as professor in both the Law School and Political Science Department. Father Coucher has earned praise from faculty for his work on core curriculum renewal, academic planning, and faculty engagement and mentoring, as well as praise from students for his accessibility and guidance and his commitment to student formation. He holds degrees from Georgetown University, the University of Michigan, the Weston Jesuit School of Theology, and Columbia University. And he joined the faculty at Boston College Law School in 2003, where he served prior to being named Senior Associate Dean of the Morrissey College in 2012. Prior to entering the Society of Jesus in 1992, he clerked for Judge Kenneth F. Ripple in the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Seventh Circuit and worked as a litigator at Hogan and Hartson in Washington, D.C. After joining the judge, he taught political science at Loyola University in Maryland and was assistant to the director of Loyola's, I'm having trouble with that word tonight, Center for Values and Service before coming to Boston College. Welcome, Dean Coucher.
Thanks, Nadia.
And now I'm going to turn it over to Mary Rose for our first question.
Thanks so much, Nadia, and thank you to our guests for taking time out of your schedule to talk to us about this exciting new project at BC. And thanks to everyone who has joined in for this conversation. I came to BC in 2011 as someone who couldn't decide if I wanted to major in math or English, which I thought at the time made me a little bit of an odd duck, but I actually think that it's not too strange. It's really an interest in the human condition along with an interest in problem solving. And when looked at this way, I find it now totally obvious that I ended up gravitating towards engineering. And I was drawn to engineering in spite of being at BC, a place which at the time had no engineering program. I think I really was drawn to it because I was at BC. I had chosen math as my major, and I had great math professors at BC who kept me really loving the subject, even through some of the hardest classes I have ever taken, which includes graduate school. But at the same time, I was, living the BC experience, which involves volunteering, reflection, travel. And so I was constantly being encouraged to reckon with the very human problems in our community, our city, our world. And I think that wanting to use the quantitative skills that I was learning in the classroom to address these types of problems is a natural product of the BC education. So all of that is to say that I personally am very thrilled about the development of BC's human-centric engineering program, and I have no doubt that there will be immense interest among the student body. So I'd like to kick off this conversation by asking Dean Coucher to speak about some of the ways that BC has changed over the last 5 years since I've graduated, and specifically why from the university an engineering program is the right next step.
Thanks, Mary Rose, and thanks to everybody who's tuned in tonight. It's a great opportunity for us to talk more about this new program that we are very excited about. I think there's several things that have come together over the last few years that have led us to this point. One is, I think, our recognition of the numbers of students who are like Mary Rose, who come to BC with this interest in learning about the human and learning about the quantitative and wanting to put it to work in the world somehow. That there are more and more students that we recognize want a liberal arts education and also want to know how they can put their skills to work in a kind of applied way to make the world a better place. There's clearly more and more students coming to us with those desires. I think programmatically, a couple of things have happened that have helped make this decision. I would point to the core renewal process that began around 2012 and the strategic planning process that began in 2017, I think. The core renewal process really focused our attention on how can we help students and faculty members understand the core curriculum as really at the heart of a BC education, and how can students and faculty members be more engaged in it and understand its importance. And I think in the whole process of core renewal, we really focused on several things that contribute to where we are in starting a human-centered engineering program. One is the integration of intellectual rigor and character formation, really taking seriously how to integrate a concern for academic excellence and rigor and who students are becoming as people and how they want to live their lives in the world, seeing that as an integrated part of the academic mission. Second, I think, is interdisciplinarity and integration of what we're knowing. So we don't see disciplines as these discrete units that don't speak to one another, but recognizing that solving problems in the world and even knowing the world adequately requires us to look at things from the perspectives of different disciplines and trying to integrate them. I think third is a increased intentionality on reflection, helping students think about, why does this matter? What am I learning about how I want to live in the world? What am I learning about who this is calling me to be as a person? How does this all fit together and call me to act? And then finally, the common good itself, the theme of this whole program, that we want the core curriculum and a BC education more broadly to prepare students to live meaningful lives in the world oriented towards service of the common good. So to help students recognize that whatever they're doing in the world, we want them to be aware of their responsibility to help create communities in which everybody can flourish. So that those core renewal pieces, I think, laid the foundation for this. The strategic planning process at the university began in 2017, interestingly kind of brought this together in different ways. So the most, I think, pertinent example is around integrated science. There'd been for many years a conversation about integrated science in the university, but as the strategic planning process unfolded, it became clear that people wanted all of the university to somehow participate in that it was not just something that the sciences were doing, and also that we wanted it to be mission distinctive in ways that were oriented towards society. And that ultimately led us to the third strategic direction in the strategic plan, which talks about increasing research and scholarship oriented towards solving social problems and promoting the common good, and more immediately, the Schiller Institute for Integrated Science and Society. And that initiative, which is a cross-university initiative, is meant to promote both research that will deal with complex problems in the areas of health, environment, and energy, but also new undergraduate academic programs. And I think that's where the impetus for engineering really came in. We began to see engineering as an area where we could integrate different ways of knowing, different ways of thinking, different sorts of skills that would help students be prepared to go out into the world to make a difference, to really use that desire to do something applied to make the world a better place would really come home. So I think those sorts of developments in the university really brought us to a point where it made sense for Boston College to have an engineering program very much a part of its mission. So it's a new thing, but it's very much grounded, I think, in the tradition of the university.
Absolutely, and that provides sort of great context for the why now question, right? Why is this happening at BC now? I wonder if we might just very quickly, might be some prospective students who might be watching this really interested in pursuing a program in engineering. Professor Bhattacharya, could you tell us a little bit about perhaps what kind of engineering might be taught, perhaps when first classes might be offered, how many credits students might need, students might be interested in learning about?
Sure. Thank you, Nadia. So we happen to be located in kind of in a place there are 14 different world-renowned educational institutions within 2 hours driving distance, graduating about 5,800 students every year. So for us to create and introduce something that'll be based on perhaps lessons learned was an opportunity. And based on this opportunity, we have for the past year been working in crafting something that's based on our ethos, our principles as BC, and what we stand for, as well as what's going on around the world and where engineering education is heading towards. So taking this opportunity, we've been working towards launching this new program in the fall of 2021. And it's going to be 120 credit hours. We intend seeking ABET accreditation once the first cohort graduates. And it is located within, as Greg mentioned, within the College of Arts and Sciences. And that is intentional. So we hope that our students can benefit from the rich tradition that BC has in the liberal arts education, as well as be able to couple engineering fundamentals, what is needed for an engineering student, and the liberal arts meshed together, working towards project-based experiential learning.
Yeah, I would like to ask our guests, and specifically Dean Kauscher, about the name. You know, it's kind of very specifically named centric engineering program. So could you talk a little bit about what is meant by human centric, and whether this name, this focus, was the intention from the beginning or something that kind of came about naturally as you looked around at the context of BC and saw the strengths and resources already existing here?
I think calling the program and the major human-centered engineering probably evolved a little bit over time, but one thing that's important, I think, is that from the start, we wanted to make sure that if we were going to do engineering at Boston College, it was being done in a way that was distinctive, that it was connected to the mission. As Sunan was suggesting, there's a lot of schools in the Boston area that have engineering programs. We don't just need to have another engineering program. I think we need to have an engineering program that is grounded in and flows out of and fosters the distinctive mission of the university. So I think in terms of human-centered engineering, we wanted to emphasize the notion that students who graduate from this program are not simply prepared to most efficiently solve this particular design problem, but they're doing it in a way that takes into account the human beings who are affected by that and who they are as human beings, as engineers, but the human beings who are affected by this at all different levels. So not just who's the user, but who are the people who are going to be impacted by whatever is produced. I think that focus on the human and the human-centeredness of the engineering project is really important. Sunan could probably talk more about this than I, but my sense is that engineering education, and your own experience might actually speak to this, engineering education can be very much focused on how do I solve this particular problem, and might lose sight of how does this connect to a range of different human realities. And I think we wanted to make sure that that was the focus of our program. I think that's also why we were very intentional in saying this is going to be an engineering department and an engineering major within the Morrissey College of Arts and Sciences, not a freestanding engineering school, but a department within the heart of the liberal arts project in the College of Arts and Sciences to really emphasize that this engineering education is connected to the other things that are going on in the College of Arts and Sciences. And so engineering majors, like all students at Boston College, will fulfill the core curriculum. They'll be grounded in the humanities and the social sciences and the natural sciences. As students in the College of Arts and Sciences, they will also fulfill the language requirement that's part of the College of Arts and Sciences. We wanted to make it clear that this is a major within the liberal arts college and not a new kind of professional school, but something within the context of the Morrissey College of Arts and Sciences. So that was quite intentional. I think once we then began to think about what should we call this, the human-centered major, human-centered program became clear. And I think it really keeps us grounded in what we want to be distinctive about this program.
In fact, Mayor, I can also add onto that the term human-centered is actively being used in various other disciplines. And the reason for that is unintended consequences. It's quite apparent today in terms of what's happening because people have introduced solutions, ideas, designs, engineering products, etc., that have had unintended consequences that have come back to bite us. So is there a way we can create a program which will provide the students the ability to be able to foresee those things, the people to also look at the end user and incorporate them into the design cycle rather than just designing something and implementing it and expecting people to embrace that solution. So that's our larger goal here.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense and is something that is really exciting to me about this specific program, because I think that you're right, that a lot of engineering education can end up being kind of about efficiency for efficiency's sake and not even, thinking about the humans at the center of the problem at all, let alone the potential unintended consequences. And so I'd like to know a little bit more about specifically how you would incorporate that into coursework or into the type of project-based learning that is going to be so fundamental to this program.
Sure. You want me to go ahead?
Go ahead and start.
Sure.
Yeah.
So as Greg mentioned, the core renewal, complex problems, enduring questions, that was actually an inspiration for building something that would be that would have both people crossing over the boundaries of their disciplines, being able to work together, and even revisit the way engineering is taught. Can we develop and follow a pedagogy where multiple viewpoints will come in, but at the end of the day, a and proceed through the program. So that is one of the fundamental areas in terms of what we're trying to focus upon, a strong foundation coming from the results of the core renewal, and then taking the body of knowledge of engineering and being able to weave these other experiences through it. So it's not an easy task to create something that will be, because we're used to creating courses, they're course takers moving through a program. But when you get into experiences and projects, and how do you bring multiple faculty members, multiple viewpoints into a project-based experience is what we are kind of trying to overcome right now.
And I think it will be clear, it'll be important as we go about the project of hiring faculty members and then recruiting students to really have both faculty members and students who understand the project and want to be part of a distinctive project. And so, some of what we need to do at the outset is establish a curriculum. We also have to make sure that we're hiring faculty members who want to build that kind of curriculum and understand what we're asking of them as faculty members. They have to be, I think, open to the kind of distinctive teaching that we're hoping for. And as Sunit said, we've learned a lot, I think, from the complex problems and enduring questions courses in the core renewal process about how this can be done. And we're excited about the ways in which faculty members can kind of work together to integrate things. And I think it's building that integration into the course design from a range of different perspectives that will make this distinctive. That will happen when we have more faculty members on the ground, but I think that's the intentionality that's behind this.
And on that point of hiring faculty and recruiting students, what is the timeline on that? What has been done already? How do you kind of map that going forward if the classes are to begin fall of 2021? And where do you look for those kinds of professors that you're interested in, this specific?
I'll start, I guess. We're at the beginning of both processes, I would say, both of faculty recruitment and of student recruitment. We have hired our first faculty member who will start later this summer, and we're actively engaged in conversations with a number of other folks. Ranks, so senior people, entry-level people. And the hope would be that we have a small group of faculty in place at the start of the coming academic year, and then have a larger complement of faculty in place ready to start the curriculum in the fall of 2021 with the incoming students, and then continuing to build the faculty from there. We're starting a department from scratch, so that's a big undertaking. But I think it's interesting that there are people out there who are interested in this project. And when we sort of developed advertising materials for the faculty position, when we describe what we want to do, I think there are people who are actually drawn to this. Student recruitment is similarly kind of at an early stage. The students who will be freshmen in the fall of 2021 are kind of going into their senior in high school now, so they're actively looking at the college search process, and we'll be engaged in conversations with those students this summer and into the fall. So that's all happening. I think there will be a lot of interest there. I mean, over the years, I think we've heard students have wanted engineering at Boston College. There are a lot of students and families, I think, who are happy to see that Boston College is starting an engineering program. Again, I think the key thing for us will be making sure that the students who come recognize what they're coming for. That this is a distinctive kind of engineering program. Definitely integrating the rigorous analytical skills that are part of any good engineering program with the kind of human-focused liberal arts education that Boston College has always been very strong in. If they want something that is actually more focused on efficiency for efficiency's sake, this isn't going to be the right program for them. So that's got to be clear, I think, to students as they're looking at their choices.
As far as faculty faculty members joining us, to your question, Mary Rose, we are very fortunate to be where we are located. And we also have engineering schools that are bold. Like Bold College down the street. There are departments within MIT that are experimenting with many of the user-centered, human-centered principles and wish to bring about those changes. So from a faculty point of view, we are getting a lot of interest from people who believe in this particular mission. We kind of went about it a little differently. Most engineering schools start with a graduate program and then kind of bring and introduce an undergraduate. For us, it was pretty deliberate to start with an undergraduate so that we can establish our philosophy. We can follow the BC ethos, and we can kind of draft a vision that other faculty members can then, upon joining the department, take it 10 steps forward. So that's been kind of the method to this madness, as you would say.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. As you both alluded to, it's a huge undertaking to develop a new department, to develop a new program, but it also creates a lot of excitement and opportunity on campus. And I know that a lot of faculty who aren't necessarily going to be directly involved in this engineering program might want to collaborate, might want to sort of create some interdisciplinary opportunities. So I'm wondering what you're thinking in terms of how cross-campus collaborations will occur with this new engineering program and what your vision is for that.
One thing we learned early in the planning actually was that there are a number of people in different disciplines and schools across campus who have engineering backgrounds. So that's been kind of interesting. And we had a year ago at this time, a faculty task force with faculty members from across the university, not just from the Morrissey College of Arts and Sciences, to begin to talk about planning the curriculum. And I was struck by how much interest there was across schools and across disciplines. And we need to build on that. I think there will be certain departments that will be important connections, particularly. So math and computer science kind of most immediately will be able to contribute. But hope, I think, that a range of different folks, integrative, interdisciplinary projects that we're talking about. Experience has been interesting. So we've had a couple of different complex problems courses that have integrated history and natural science in different ways. And so figuring out how to replicate that experience within the engineering curriculum with different sorts of disciplines is an aspiration that we have. But as you say, I think there's a lot of interest around campus. And so that the challenge in some ways of the next year is really harnessing that in course design.
Yeah, the interest, I mean, I'm really, it's been a real pleasant surprise and inspiration for all of us to see how many people from, let's say, the language departments, theology, education, nursing, have been wanting to participate and have come forward and asking us, how can we help? Can we work on a collaborative project? And actually, to see those things, we have started a few design-driven courses with design thinking in it, where School of Education, the School of Social Work, School of Nursing, faculty members have been participating and working on interdisciplinary projects, offering real-life projects, research projects to the classes. So that has started the whole cycle of precedence over here that we hope to build upon for the engineering program. So I feel very optimistic about how other faculty members will be able to participate, whether they're close to engineering or not.
The explicit incorporation of experiential learning is a big part of this program. There's a junior project as well as a senior capstone. And I'd love to hear more about how what you kind of envision, what form you envision those taking. Maybe how many students will they be working with external stakeholders? Just what that looks like.
Sure. So a lot of the nitty-gritties, meaning the gritty details, are still in the works, and we are expecting when faculty members join, they'll be able to contribute to the mechanisms and the workings of it. But when you step back and look at the 4 years, one of the issues that people face is students become course takers, but not necessarily have the opportunity to connect the dots. We're dealing with Generation Z, which is a little bit, they are different from, their experiences are different. They're different from, gray-haired people like myself. Expectations are high, and we need to be able to exceed and not just adequately meet their expectations. So for us to blend through the program, not just have course takers, but to be able to repeat some of those principles throughout is very important. So you've created a strong foundation, like complex problems, engineering questions, one of them, introduction to innovation through design thinking, introduction to human-centered engineering. So those courses at some point need to be applied, those principles need to be applied through projects. So, and collaboration is the thread throughout. So when they get to the point, their junior year, for example, the junior collaborative projects, we are hoping that the Schiller Institute that is coming up that you hear about right now will also offer a lot of opportunities. We just hired an executive director, and in collaboration with her, we hope to be able to attract students and faculty members to be able to work in a project-based environment. But at the end of the day, we want them to be able to connect why they are learning what they're learning, what their experiences of the past were, and how those can be used in their next project, for example, the senior impact project that goes on for a whole year. One could actually start in their junior year and then take the same subject matter or the same complex project and continue to their senior year, the senior capstone project. So that means they get about 1.5 years of reinforcement of these principles, which we feel is extremely important for the student to build their portfolio and the story that they're going to be telling outside.
So before we open up for questions from the audience, I sort of wanted to bring us back to our current moment. So we're living in a global pandemic, one of the worst in history, certainly the first that we have experienced. And we've seen sort of the crucial role of scientists and engineers in this pandemic. And I'm just wondering, what key lessons do you think we can take from this current moment and apply to this new engineering program? Are there any things that have come up in the past few months that you feel like are going to be essential to this new program, to the students entering, and sort of what have you taken away from the past few months that might inform students' learning?
Maybe I'll start there and suggest the importance of seeing how things are connected. You know, seeing issues don't present themselves discretely and can't be addressed discretely. We have to see how they interact and the ways in which economic inequalities have played out in terms of who's affected by the pandemic, things like that. It very much show, I think, that not seeing the connections has serious negative implications for the common good. How do we see things as connected? Interestingly, we're celebrating the 5th anniversary of Laudato Si, Pope Francis's encyclical on it's often talked about as an encyclical on the environment. It's really broader than that, but one phrase that repeats itself over and over is everything is connected. Everything is connected. And I think that kind of lesson, that kind of insight is really important. Another thing from the encyclical is a critique of what he calls the technocratic paradigm, and that has to be countered by a concern for the human and a concern for ethics and a concern for integration. And I think that's very much at the heart of what we would hope for from the human-centered engineering program that we're launching. And that connects, I think, very much to the tragedy and the problems that we're seeing in the midst of the pandemic.
I think, as Greg mentioned, the term connectedness is so important. And we often forget all the connections and the various networks of things and the cause and effect that can happen when we don't take into account consequences. Even in the curriculum design, we have, if you look at our flow, we have a reflection session every semester, which is a 1 credit hour equivalent. And the goal of that particular session is to bring people together to reflect. Why did I study what I studied? Why did I go through those kinds of courses? I mean, why go through 4 language courses? I could have been taking another thermodynamics course or something like that. It's very important for them to be able to reflect at every step and not just have bookends of reflections. So that's one part. And then, Nadia, as you mentioned, lack of connectedness is very apparent to us today in terms of us not taking into account how things could travel from the eastern part of the world to the western part of the world, us feeling very comfortable with ourselves where we are, and that those are their problems. It's not everybody's problem. And we can see how quickly things can spread if it is not, handled properly on various levels, whether it's political or it is systemic or it's human.
Maybe just one comment on reflection before we go to the questions, because I think that's one of the things that is distinctively Jesuit about this program is this emphasis on reflection. When first-year students begin in the fall and they gather in front of Gasson Hall and they're charged to learn about Jesuit education, they're told to be attentive and be reflective and be loving. I think that's at the heart of this. How are we attentive to what's going on? How are we asking ourselves why this matters? And how should I act? That kind of growth in discernment flowing out of reflection needs to be part of this program as it's part of all of a BC education. And I think that's part of what grounds this program in Jesuit distinctiveness.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I'm so grateful that we've had this opportunity.
And with that, we will turn to some of the audience questions that have come in. So our first one is from Aiden O'Neill, who is a member of the class of 2023 and asks, I'm curious about how/if the physical building of the Schiller Institute will contribute to the human-centered part of the program.
I'll start there, and Sunan can jump in. I think one of the things that has been key for us in designing that building and thinking about what it will look like, how it will operate, is emphasizing the connections and emphasizing the collaboration dimensions of this. So the building design is quite open. There'll be ways to see what's going on in the different labs and classrooms and maker spaces. There'll be spaces in the building for students and faculty members to collaborate. And I think that kind of interaction and connection very much is of the spirit of this program. There'll be a range of maker spaces and prototyping spaces, some of which will be sort of open to a larger community and some of which will be focused more on engineering programs. But that kind of creativity and making, doing, I think is very much part of the spirit of this program as well. So the engineering department will be in that building, the teaching labs and prototyping spaces will be in that building. So I think that the design of the building and the way in which it's all meant to interact in some ways embodies our hopes for this program.
Yeah, I use the analogy of a test kitchen. We're hoping that this would be kind of the central place where students, irrespective of their major and their interest, if we can kind of inculcate the proof of concept mentality, being able to prototype something. If you have an idea you wish to innovate, whether you're from the business school, you are a language student, you're in mathematics, if you have a thought, an idea, you should be able to physically test how that could truly be implemented. That is something that we're trying to bring about through the Schiller Institute building, where we will have facilities for making, prototyping. And truth be told, high school students are coming in with some of those abilities and desires and aspirations anyway. So it's not that we are trying to introduce something from scratch. They are the driving force also behind this whole thing. So with this building, the architectural considerations that have been taken into account, we are hoping that there's transparency there within the building design where students will be able to see, let's say, engineering students or people in the maker space working and get inspired that I would like to do the same thing that that person's doing in there. So those are some of the things, Aiden, we are trying to kind of put in place.
There's also an expectation that there'll be classes from all across the curriculum in the building, not just classes that are science classes or not just classes that are engineering classes. So students will be engaging with one another from across the university in the midst of this center. Another interesting feature, I think, is the Shea Center for Entrepreneurship from the Carroll School will be located in the building as well. So that is another example of how we hope to kind of integrate things and give students a sense of, well, how do these ideas flow into the world in an entrepreneurial way? So it all very much, I think, flows together in terms of integration and connection.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm hearing a lot now about the connection and how connection will be fostered even in the physical building, which is fantastic. I actually, Father Jim Keenan, who is the Vice Provost for Global Institute and a Canisius Chair of Theology, has asked another question. I think that's somewhat related to connection, related to transportation. So what will human-centered engineering courses look like that are focused on transportation in particular? And I know Rose is particularly interested in this as well.
Mary Rose, you want to take the question? You want to go?
Sure. I think Jim may have meant that one for me. One of the reasons that I love transportation so much is because it is so focused and so related, interconnected with just our daily life as humans. And I think that it's so key to consider transportation and so many other engineering problems in their specific contexts. I specifically focus on urban transportation systems and mass transit. And those are systems that exist in cities that have so many other characteristics about them that impact human life. They have neighborhoods that may or may not be well resourced or connected. And thinking about how changes you make to that system impact people's ability to access healthcare, to access education, to access jobs, and what that looks like, you know, throughout the course of a day or a lifetime is so important. And so when I think about transportation and what a human-centric class would look like, I think immediately of how important it is to kind of do case studies that force you to think of any problem in general as you're learning the fundamental principles that govern systems, but also in the specific. And in the specific is really where it comes down to how are humans impacted? What do they need? Who, you know, are those humans with specific needs? Are they being served by any changes we're trying to make? And then are other people that may seem disconnected, as we've talked about in this conversation, are there unintended consequences for them?
Mary Rose, an excellent answer to an excellent question from transportation. In my mind, is a complex problem with an enduring question. And typically, from an engineering point of view, when transportation comes in, typically, I mean, the thought is designing a car or a boat or an aircraft or a spacecraft, but not getting into all the other allied areas that it affects. So looking at this whole thing from a systems thinking point of view is very important, and it's a multidiscipline problem once one gets into it. I was fortunate enough to be associated with an autonomous car design project at Olin College, where it was being designed for seniors who would be taken to their medical facilities, etc. And what was the biggest obstacle in that one was the interface. How will seniors kind of talk to a car or press the buttons or kind of try to find their way onto that little print? I mean, we have grandparents who struggle with remote controls right now when there are 3 remote controls for a smart TV, and it's not that smart to help them. So transportation is one of those areas that we're hoping that people like yourself, Mary Rose, will be able to bring some live projects to us. And maybe through the junior or senior capstone projects, we could bring those to the forefront.
I'm struck too how transportation issues connect to energy, environment, and health in ways that fit very nicely within the Schiller umbrella. So it's a good area to think more about.
I certainly. From the audience is from Delphine Gouraud, a perspective about how human-centered engineering will be in a liberal arts school, but what is specifically Jesuit Catholic about it, and how will this find itself into the curriculum?
Well, I think various things I've said already might connect to that. I think the idea of helping students have an integrated view of the world is very Jesuit Catholic. I think Catholic, in its broadest understanding, is about wholeness. How are we helping students get a sense of wholeness? I think, too, the whole emphasis on engineering that connects to the common good is very much connected to the Catholic social thought tradition. How are we thinking about helping to create communities in which everybody can flourish, or solving social problems that contribute to the flourishing of everybody? That, I think, is a very Jesuit Catholic thing to be doing. And even in Jesuit history, works that will contribute to the common good are part of the things that Jesuits should be doing, going back to the very founding document of the society in 1540. So I think this is an interesting kind of contemporary manifestation of what Jesuits have always been trying to do. How can we best prepare students to make a positive contribution to the world in ways that are attentive to the fullness of what it is to be human? I think that's very much what this program is about, and that fits very comfortably within authentic Jesuit Catholic education.
And something for Delphine. Um, there is actually an international association of Jesuit engineering schools. It's headquartered in Europe, in France. And if you have a chance, do Google that and ICAM, ICAM. And they have been following, I mean, they've been working hard in incorporating some of the things that Greg just talked about. And we have recently been introduced to them by Jim Keenan, and looking forward to interacting with that group globally. Global is the other piece that, you know, it's not just about us over here. It's about whether it's emerging economies, whether it's poverty-stricken places, whether it's developed countries. How can we bring humankind together to be solving problems? How can we, graduate students, to go in and be able to solve problems for the greater good, a common good?
Yeah, which is a great transition to a fantastic question we got, but was not, it was an anonymous question, I guess. And that is, you know, you're talking about sort of making a difference, and perhaps are there going to be tangible ways in which the program will make a difference in the community we live in, whether that's the Boston College community, the greater Boston community, New England? Are there intentional ways that the program will try to help those communities out?
I certainly hope there will be, as we begin to think more about they would connect to local entities and local problems. It'll take time for us to work all that out, but I think we've got a long history at BC of doing that. If you think about a program like Pulse, for example, which is connecting students to a whole range of service providers in the city, you know, if we can do something similar with student-based projects in engineering, it would be very much in the spirit of the program. Soon I might want to talk more about this, but there's a recent kind of design swarm project that it has asked students to think about issues related to the pandemic. You know, I think there's ways in which we could very easily design projects connected to classes that would have very concrete implications on campus or in the city.
Yeah, I mean, actually working with projects right in our backyard is a great opportunity. And as Greg mentioned, the Pulse program, I think it's about 50 years old that BC has operated. It's a great starting point. And I'm hoping that our students will be able to take advantage of the Pulse program, as well as several other programs that are ongoing. The School of Social Work, for example, we worked with them during our Innovation Through Design Thinking class, where they had a problem Dr. Betancourt was working on with refugees who are relocated from Somalia, Somalian refugees and Bhutanese refugees who are relocated here in the Massachusetts, Boston area, and some of the issues they are going through in assimilation. And our students worked in trying to solve those intervention problems to help much more smoother using technology. I'm hoping that those kinds of problems will come from the various different schools, School of Nursing, Education, etc., so that we can actually start with our own backyard and then move global.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And sort of thinking about, we were sort of talking about how we're going to take the information learned from COVID and apply it to the classroom. I think another thing that we've mentioned that's happening right now, obviously, is that massive protest, a lot of attention being placed on sort of the anti-Black violence that's going on. And Bert Howell, who's the executive director of Intersections, has raised a question related to this, which is, racism is one of the most complex problems we face. Would students in human-centered engineering focus on these types of questions? And how would that be approached in the classroom or outside of the classroom as well?
I think certainly a dimension of human-centeredness would need to be recognizing the full humanity of everybody who's impacted by it. To the extent that we imagine solutions or problems impacting people differently, we certainly want students in this program to be attentive to that reality and to be learning how to go about imagining everybody that they encounter or everybody who's going to be affected by a project or an issue as fully human with dignity that needs to be respected and ensured and promoted. How that presents itself in the context of any given engineering issue, I think, is going to be different related to whatever the issue is. But to have students who are attentive to this, who are thinking about this, who are not blind to it, I think that has got to be key. I think that's got to be a dimension of being attentive to the full humanity of everybody who's affected by a particular issue.
Yeah, Bert, your question is right. Very, very relevant today. We have actually built a few courses right up front. I mean, other than the complex problems and engineering questions, we've also got innovation through design thinking and introduction to human-centered engineering. And we're hoping that these won't be just, engineering widget creating courses. Our hope is, whether it's gender, race, whether it's aging, all these different areas would be, incorporated, and student teams will be able to address and solve complex problems. And if those problems also incorporate, let's say, something, whether it's an interface for an app versus a widget that will help them, or a product that will help them, those are the outcomes and the prototyping abilities that they'll be able to focus on. But how do they work with the actual end user, with and not for, is the important piece over here. And we want to kind of inculcate that discipline into all our students, so that by the time they're in their capstone level, they'll be able to self-select projects that will help them tell their stories.
Yeah, and if I could just add before I wrap up, I think that the fact that it's human-centric kind of demands attention to these historical wrongs, such as racism, and thinking about what a transportation class that's human-centric would demand. I talked about thinking about transportation systems and their contexts, and cities we know embody a lot of institutional racism that has existed for a long time and been kind of built into the physical landscape. And so I think any engineering course that's trying to really consider all the human implications and amplify voices that have historically been left out of engineering decisions needs to pay attention to that context and who has not been considered in it before. So that's all the time that we have for this evening. I want to thank my co-host Nadia for taking the time to be with us tonight, and we would both like to thank our guests Anand and Greg for giving us such wonderful insight into the beginnings of this exciting new chapter in BC's history, and we really look forward to following the progress of the human-centered engineering program in the years to come. The next segment of the show at 6 will be on Jesuit accompaniment in vulnerable times. The speakers will be Father James Martin of America Magazine and Father John Butler, the Haub Vice President for Mission and Ministry at BC. The hosts will be Father Jim Keenan and Father Ramesh Richards. It will take place on Friday, June 5th at 6 p.m. And to attend, is very brief, but each segment has a different webinar link. So please do check edu/show at 6 to see what the upcoming segments are and register for the ones you're well, and stay safe. Good night from Boston College.
Thank you, and good night.
Thanks all.